Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am so excited to be back in the studio doing this podcast for you. My name is Andre Plout, and the name of the practice is Hello Aesthetics, where technology and artistry meet to give you the best in beauty, health, and wellness. I want to thank everyone who is joining or who will be joining. And I'm very excited today for this particular topic. I've worked really hard on it, and I have some beautiful information to bring to you to help us understand why we have issues with weight, weight loss, weight gain, inabilities, and what's actually happening with the body and the brain. I want to introduce my guest. This is Donna Harstead. How are you, Donna? I'm really excited that you're here. Thank you so much for giving me your time. Donna has been with me for probably 18 months or longer. I could be wrong. And we have been on a beautiful journey of wellness, weight loss, and beauty. And as you can see, she is a beautiful woman. She has twins, how that's even possible. And we've been able to turn her physical life around, which helps her mental life, which makes us all feel great. It's very important that we look good so that we feel good. And when we feel good, we want to look good. And we allow the body and the brain to work together. And that is a lot of what this topic has to do with. Now, we did advertise that Dr. Smith was going to be with us this evening, who is a psychologist. Unfortunately, he had an emergency, so he will not be able to join us this evening. So I went ahead and scrambled and did all the research I could, and I'm going to speak as though I'm a psychologist, when really I'm just a nurse practitioner. But I will give you the nuts and bolts of the topic, the psychology of hunger. This particular topic was born from the many texts and phone calls I get from patients with compliments and complaints about their weight loss journey and the medication that we provide to help them lose weight. I do find, or I have heard from patients, that they'll get on a particular medication and they'll have good appetite suppression, and then they'll come off and they'll go back on and the appetite suppression won't be quite as good, or they'll stay on the medication for a while and they'll feel that their appetite is not as suppressed. Well, there's a lot of variables in how our appetites are controlled and what we intake and output, what we need and what we want. You know, we in this country have this crazy desire to be bone thin at all times. And it's a tall order. I mean, I will tell you, for those of you who've been following me, I've lost in the last 6 years about 80 pounds, maybe a little bit more. And I recently got down to a low of 170, which was where I was at our last podcast. And that is thin for me, like I said then, and I say it now. And it's really hard to maintain down at 170. I went on vacation after the last podcast, and I put 3 pounds on vacation, which was okay. Didn't bother me. I wasn't freaked out. But I came home, I switched medicines, and there was a lot of variable in what my body was doing. And actually, 2 days ago, I was 180 pounds. That's 10 pounds up. I have since taken about 5 off, so I'm at a midpoint of 175, and I feel okay. I'm still fitting in my clothes, although they did fit. Some of my newer clothes fit a little better at 170. But it's hard to stay down at that weight, and I don't know that I'm willing to do what it takes to stay down there. Hey, Angie, it is so good to see you, girl. I miss you, one of my old cronies from South Carolina. Thank you for tuning in, love. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to type in. But you're a stick, girl, so you have no weight management problems. Anyway, so I was talking about how it's hard for me to stay down at 170 because I love food. And we know that food is love, food is happiness, food is social, food is gratifying. Food, I mean, we can't live without food. I once heard, I worked with an Asian couple once when I was in the salon industry, and they said something about Americans live to eat, where other cultures eat to live. And I think here in the States, we really, really do live to eat. And it is part of what drives the obesity epidemic. All right, so that was my big commentary. Let's get started on the topic. Hi, Donna. It's really great to see you, girl. Another one from South Carolina who's now in Utah. Woo woo! I really appreciate you tuning in. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. So let's start with, Stacy Sandiford. This was my mentor when I was in the hairdressing industry. She taught me everything I know about hair color. Girl, if you need to, ask me a question, even though you can text me, but you can ask me a question here if you like. So let's go to the first question on my info sheet is, what is the gut-brain axis? And, this is all going to sound kind of complicated and crazy, but I'm going to try to keep it real simple and really user-friendly. So the gut-brain axis is the chemical and nerve communication between the stomach and the brain. The brain is always on and needs a constant supply of fuel. The fuel comes from the food that we eat and affects brain function and ultimately our mood. And then, according to Harvard Med, 2/3 of society falls into the overweight or obese category in the United States. And that's really an unfortunate number, but it is true. I've lived in a number of states. I've seen many, 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 many people in many, many parts of the country, and we are definitely in an obesity epidemic. I, too, was a sufferer of obesity. And it's interesting because we make all these excuses. I'm a little overweight. I'm not obese. Those charts are crazy. Those numbers are crazy. And while I agree with some of that thought process, it's not good if we use it as an excuse. So finally, at 175 pounds, I am in what we call the normal weight range for a gentleman of my size. And the low end of that BMI chart is 147 pounds, which would be unreasonable for me. I would look like a victim of starvation. So that wouldn't be physically possible for me. But we have to be careful that we're not using those charts as an excuse not to do the right thing. Current research indicates that brain circuitry, which controls eating in humans, is regulated not only by homeostatic mechanisms, but also by the reward, emotional, memory, attention, and cognitive control systems. Now, that was a mouthful, but let's make it simple. The hypothalamus is a part of the brain that controls food intake through chemical messages. You get hungry, your body sends a hormone or a peptide signal to the brain to make your stomach rumble, telling you that you're hungry. The hypothalamus controls food intake through chemical messages. The first chemical we'll talk about is leptin. Leptin is a hormone, and it is secreted by adipose or fat tissue. So interestingly enough, the circulating levels of leptin are correlated to the amount of fat on your body. So those of us that are leaner will have, I think it's less leptin. I have it written further down. Let me continue on and we'll get that clarified in just a minute. Levels are correlated to the amount of fat on your body. Obese folks produce more leptin. Thinner people have less circulating leptin. Leptin is an indirect measure of the amount of body fat and should dictate how much we need to eat. Larger folks have more stored energy, so they should need to eat less physiologically. And thinner people have lower levels of leptin, indicating low amount of stored energy or fat, so the body will have more physiologic hunger. And it doesn't sound like that's going to make sense, but that's how the body works. When you are bigger or you have more body fat, you will have more leptin, and you should not to eat quite as much because your body should be able to pull from the stores. Now, we know that that doesn't work because obese people continue to eat for whatever reason, and it's not physiologic. So there's got to be another component, which we'll talk about. The same thing, thinner people have lower leptins of level, indicating low amounts of stored energy. So thin people or people who tend to eat very little, they actually are going to be hungry more often. And I do believe, and I've never been a very, very thin person, so it's hard for me to speak to it from personal experience, but I do believe that thin people use mind control to control those feelings of hunger because they're so driven to be thin. And I do believe that that has a lot to do with how they manage to stay so thin. Are you bored out of your minds on me yet? Am I
No,
killing you?
it all makes sense.
It is starting. It will
does,
start to
yeah.
make sense, and I promise you, the
Does.
information will be random as we go, but it's going to all tie together in the end. So what we've come to find is that low calorie and high calorie diets lead to the same outcome. So obese people and super thin people who undereat, overexercise, not people who have anorexia or bulimia, just people who are not ill, but they are driven to be super thin and super fit. Those are the people that I'm talking about. So people who overeat and people who undereat, it leads to the same outcome, and that outcome is leptin resistance or leptin tolerance. And that is, it's a bizarre concept, but it goes along even with the diabetes story. When we're diabetic, thank you, Maral. I really appreciate it. It's the lights in the studio. That's what makes me look so good. Thank you. Where was I? Serena. Hi, Serena. So good to see you, love. Leptin resistance or leptin tolerance. All right, same thing in diabetes, right? When we have diabetes, we have what's called insulin resistance, or some of our insulin is not good enough quality and it can't be used. Well, the same thing happens with another hormone. Insulin is a hormone, leptin is a hormone. We get leptin resistance or leptin tolerance. The physiologic control mechanism should help us maintain body weight and energy expenditures. When the system is resistant or tolerant to the signal, we get fat. So the usual physiologic signal that tells us to stop eating or to eat more because we're undernourished or to stop eating because we're obese, that system is broken. That connection from leptin to the brain is broken, and we don't get the message. That's what leptin resistance or leptin tolerance is. The next chemical we're going to talk about, or the next hormone we're going to talk about, is ghrelin. It's produced in the stomach. It triggers and controls food intake. The system can become dysregulated by overeating and undereating. The dysfunction is particularly difficult in the obese, leading to overeating, even though this hormone should slow down our intake. So that's where the resistance or the dysregulation happens. This particular hormone, ghrelin, which we are talking about a lot because it's all about, that's what Ozempic and Mounjaro and semaglutide and Wegovy and Saxenda and Rybelsus, that's the system that all these drugs work on, this ghrelin system. So GLP, ghrelin-like peptide, is a newly discovered peptide secreted by the stomach, and when supplemented, tightens the ghrelin to brain connection, leading to lower calories and weight loss. Very of the moment related to semaglutide and Mounjaro. So ghrelin, when released in your stomach, it triggers the brain to tell you to eat. But it also tells you when you've eaten enough before you feel the stretch of your stomach. Once that system is dysregulated, you're going to overeat. That's all there is to it. For very thin people, I do believe that their system, while it is dysregulated, they do feel the trigger that they need to eat, but they're able to exert mind control. I don't know if I want to say that thinner people or people who are more disciplined, who go to the gym every day and eat a very specific type of diet and only a certain amount of calories, and they're really hyper-focused on that, if they actually have the ability to ignore what their body is telling them, even though they're supposed to be woke or evolved, and it actually is hurting them in the long run. And I know that this type of talk and commentary is going to upset some people, and that is not my goal. My goal is to help people understand how the brain-body connection works, what your body is telling you when you're hungry, and what you need to do. So the chemical, that's the chemical story, but there's more, right? When the physiology is out of whack because we overeat or undereat, we need to understand other triggers of eating. The hypothalamus receives signals from the stomach, pancreas, etc., and communicates with the reward and emotional memory systems. So this is where we're going more towards the psychology of eating. We just did the chemical portion. Now we'll talk about the psychology. Other parts of the brain also contribute to the control of eating. When we overeat or undereat, other parts or other areas of the brain override the hypothalamus and homeostasis. Homeostasis simply means that the chemicals are telling the brain it's time to eat. The chemicals are telling the brain it's time to stop eating. It stops us from overeating. It helps us with caloric control. But when we talk about emotion and other systems that can override the hypothalamus, it disturbs homeostasis. So that just means that the chemical systems are not working correctly. First up is the reward system. I needed a reward because too much talking makes a dry throat, and dry throat doesn't sound cute. The reward system. Food is rewarding and acts on the reward pathway in the brain. Dopamine and neurons affecting dopamine activity signal an action. The action is to increase the feeling of reward, overriding the hypothalamus, and has been shown on MRI to light up when viewing pics of food or when people are eating and we're looking at the brain. To me, that's fascinating. Just looking at a picture of food makes the reward pathways in your brain light up. That's been proven. This is not new information. We know that. Normal weight people will have higher levels of dopamine when compared to the obese folks. The obese or even overweight will therefore need more food to achieve elevated dopamine levels to satisfy the reward system. And again, it's not new information, but it's really not common knowledge. And it's, are we willing to understand this? Are we willing to do what we need to do in order to achieve homeostasis? Are we willing to look into ourselves and see, why am I hungry? Why am I eating? Why do I overeat? If I'm going to be honest and truth be told, I'm not interested. I'm not. I don't want to look at the issues that cause me to eat too much. But there are people in the world that will, and there are people in the world that won't. So we do what we can to help them. And education is power, and knowledge is power, and that's what this is about. Where were we? Okay. Another theory is that the more high-fat, high-calorie foods we eat, they will dull the response, and they'll need more and more reward to achieve the needed levels. Ergo, more food, which equals more weight. The theory is similar to the addiction theory, which states more exposure to the food or drug lessens effect, more drug or food needed. The emotion and memory systems are known to be potent drivers of appetite. So that's what's happening emotionally. And we now know what's happening physically when it comes to food intake and possible reasons that we gain weight. I see that you want to share this with a friend. I think, Serena, you can tag them. I think you can do that, or you can copy the link and send it to them, and they can get on Facebook and watch it live. And then the show will be posted afterwards on my YouTube channel, and it will also be available on Instagram and Facebook, so someone can watch it afterwards if need be. And of course, I'm always available for consultation. All right. So then we talk about something called HALT, right? So I don't know if this is going to be news to anyone. I'm in recovery a million years. And we were taught in recovery that the reason that we want the drug is that we're trying to tamp down a feeling. So the four main feelings, or the four main reasons why we need a drug or we need food, are four emotions or four reasons that is I forgot what it's called. What is it called, Donna? When you have like an acronym? I guess it's an acronym is the word. So thank you for that input.
No, you're welcome. I didn't even have to do anything for that.
Oh my goodness. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? I get hungry. I eat a lot. I love to eat. And when I'm lonely, I want to eat. When I'm happy, I want to eat. When I'm angry, I want to eat. And if I'm lonely, I want to eat. So I'm going to eat. That's all there is to it. And we're going to tie back to that in the end because it's going to tie everything together for us. All right. Now, I want to speak specifically to the undereaters, not people who are anorexic, God forbid, or people who have bulimia. I want to talk to the people who are very much in control of how much they eat. They're usually bone thin. They exercise a whole lot. They are very in control of how their body functions and what their body is doing and how their body looks. I have the greatest of admiration for you guys and you girls. But obesity and severe calorie restriction and control is the same disorder. And again, I'm not trying to upset you. I'm just trying to have you understand that each end of the spectrum is a problem. And like everything in life, we should live more towards the middle. My opinion, a fact, who knows? So really, it's my opinion, but I want to say it's worked for me, but I've lived on the edge on each side, so I totally get it. All right, let's speak to the undereaters. What happens to these systems when we don't eat enough? Well, first and foremost, we lose weight, right? We also feel tired, we're ill more often, and we have hair and skin problems for sure because we're undernourished. That's all there is to it. And something happens to the brain, right? So women especially suffer from this. And I talk to all of my patients, whether they're on hormones or they're on weight management or we're talking about beauty, whatever it is. Women especially have been taught their entire life, and I'm going to speak Southern for a minute, bless your hearts. But you have been taught since you were young, eat less and you will be thin. Women don't need to eat a lot. In order to stay thin, you need to eat less. And you know what? That works early on in life. And I'm not a woman, but it worked for me too when I was a kid. When I was in high school and I wanted to lose weight, ate Twinkies, 2 or 3 a day, drank coffee, smoked cigarettes. And I was thin. Well, if I ate Twinkies, drank coffee, and smoked cigarettes now, I'd be fat as a house. I promise you. And it's unfortunate that you're taught that way. And it works in the beginning. It works in your 20s. It probably even works in your 30s. By the time you hit your 40s, all hell breaks loose and all bets are off. Do you agree, disagree, Dawn?
I
do
agree
you
100%.
think
Yes.
anybody else want to? Oh, there we go. Mm-hmm. Karen Chandler Becker, my girl. We've seen her photos around the studio before. We've seen her photos all over my Facebook. It is hard to find the middle ground, Karen, and that's why we're always a work in progress and we're never, ever cured. All right. So it stops working usually in the 40s, sometimes earlier. There is something called calorie mismatch, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, I want to talk about cave brain. Isn't that a topic? Cave brain, what exactly is that? So humans have evolved to survive during times of famine. This part of the brain controls things out of our direct control. So the part of the brain that is affected by something called cave brain controls things like breathing, heart rate, body temperature, hormones, digestion, metabolism. So we cannot influence this by will. We have to influence this through an action, right? Famine or starvation means a lot of things to a lot of people. Insufficient calories, deficiency in minerals, protein, and fat defines famine or starvation, all necessary for healthy functioning of the brain. Now, we usually will get everything we need from food. Even if we don't have perfect nutrition each day, we should have enough of what we need in storage, and there should be no question or problem. Undereaters are particularly susceptible to lack of stored necessities. So I won't call a name out here, and I don't know if this gal is watching tonight, but she has watched my podcasts in the past. She was a client of mine when I lived in South Carolina. She's a beautiful woman. She is beautifully physically fit. She's very thin. She's the sweetest woman I ever know in my life. She is very, very, very thin. She's maybe 100 pounds. 105 is her top. When she gets sick, her doctors are constantly worried that she is going to go down a bad path. And it's because she has very little reserve in the way of fat or nutrients. It's really unfortunate. I don't believe she has an eating disorder. I just believe that she uses that body and mind control to keep her weight down as thin as it is. And, but we worry about that because there is not enough stored nutrient. And when you get sick and you can't intake food because you're ill, your body's going to go down a bad path. Cave brain is activated when we don't have or get enough. In the end, it slows the metabolism. It increases restlessness and anxiety. It causes cold hands and feet. It slows digestion and it affects hormones. That's why athletes who are super, super fit and eat, lots and lots of food, but they're super fit, they probably are in a calorie deficit because of intake versus exercise output, which puts them in a calorie deficit, which keeps them as lean as they need to be. But they definitely are, women especially are affected. Their hormones are affected. That's why athletes lose their ability to menstruate. That is one of the reasons why. What we all have in common, the obese and the undereaters, is that what we want is emotional well-being. And what we have in common is how overeating and undereating affects us. So if we're super obese or we're super thin, either way, we're at high risk for getting sick. And we want to be healthy. We want to live to a ripe age of 80, 90, 100. Thank you, Serena. Whatever it is, I just want to be healthy. I don't want to be old and ill. I want to be healthy. That's why I've been down this journey. That's how I've fallen into this type of medical practice, is to assist and to help people be healthy so that we can be healthy longer throughout our life, however long it is. All right. So I mentioned earlier something called calorie mismatch. So I have lots of women who come to me. I saw them in my old practice. I see them in my new practice. I talk to them all the time. And this is their story. They come to the clinic. They tell me they absolutely need to lose weight. They cannot lose weight. They're somewhere between 40 and 55. They are peri or postmenopausal. They eat 800 calories a day. They exercise all week long, or they play tennis 3 times a week, and they cannot take off weight. As a matter of fact, they are putting on weight on 800 calories. Now, why is that? It's because of something called calorie mismatch. Calorie mismatch means that you've starved the body for long enough that the metabolism is slowed down, and you're not 40 anymore, and you're not 30 anymore. And your body has said, I don't know when I'm getting my next meal. I'm going to slow all my processes down so that I can have what I need for the long term. And that's why you put on weight. Now, the answer to that is to increase caloric intake. And when you talk to people like that, they do not want to hear that. They think I am a lunatic, and they want to put my head on a plate because they think I'm insane. But it is the cure. And it's very specifically why I have Donna with me, because Donna has a really interesting story to tell. So I'm very, very excited to get there. It is a known fact that undereating and overeating affects depression and panic. Panic is the body's stress system and can be activated by undereating and worry about weight gain. I mean, it's crazy because I have a lot of women, even in their 40s and 50s, that suffer from this, who are undereaters, that also talk about anxiety and inability to sleep. We blame it on hormones and lack of progesterone, but a lot of times it has to do with calorie mismatch. One moment. Now we move on to obsession and compulsion, right? Undereating leads to heightened obsessiveness, inflexibility, and rigid routines. It may also include lack of spontaneity and inability to relax, rigidity in eating, and exercise routines. Fears of being fat are heightened, and it can also bring decreased sexual interest and activity. And that's awful. We know that people who are super duper fit and those people who don't eat a lot and they stay really thin and they exercise a lot, they're pretty rigid in their diet. Their food is measured, it's prepped, it's whatever it is. They don't eat sugar. They've cut out big swaths of categories of food. They've cut out certain foods, whatever it is. And yes, they're healthy, but what are they suffering on the back end? And are they actually as healthy as we think? Someone who's living in the middle, who has lots of reserve, God forbid they get sick. I mean, we just lived through this whole COVID thing, right? If someone who's 100 pounds, who has no reserve, got COVID and was unable to eat for 4 to 6 weeks, you think their body is going to have the ability to heal itself? I think not. And conversely, I think that's the right word, the obese, people who are very obese and their systems are not working and they get COVID, are they able to heal? I think not. I mean, I have someone who's very close to me who was obese, who was very sick with COVID, was in the ICU for 3 months, almost died a number of times, who was obese. And I know people who were very, very thin who got COVID who did not do well. So this overeating and undereating really are the same disorder. Only some of us are thin and some of us are big. And middle ground is where we need to be. So let's try to tie this all together to help us understand what it is. So appetite, hunger, weight management is all a combination of systems that affect the brain, that tell us what to do. Some of them are voluntary and some of them are involuntary. So the hypothalamus, or that part of the brain that controls breathing, heart rate, metabolism, we really can't control that with our minds, as opposed to parts of the brain that we can affect simply by a physical action. So the trick is to find the right amount of calories for yourself and keep the right amount of reserves. That speaks a lot to the undereaters. And listen, I know that I'm not going to come out of here today and have all the undereaters in the world telling me, yes, I'm going to increase my calories so I have more reserves so I can be healthier in the long run and blah, 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 blah. But I know that that's not going to happen. But open your mind to the possibility that you are too rigid and that maybe you do need to increase your calories, to increase your metabolism. I'm going to talk quickly in a minute after I continue tying this together about a woman who underate and overexercised and what exactly happened to her. So there's a part of the brain that we can only affect by eating the right amount of foods. We got to get around leptin and ghrelin resistance or dysregulation. We have to crank our metabolism up. I tell this all the time when I talk about metabolism. If you start a fire in the yard, you put the little sticks in and the paper and you light the fire, and then you put one log on it and you don't put any more wood on it, what happens to the fire? It goes out. And why does it go out? Because it doesn't have fuel. That is easily equated to undereaters. You eat once a day. I have a ton of people who tell me, I eat once a day. I'm intermittent fasting, so I only eat once a day. Well, that's incorrect intermittent fasting. That's number one. And number two, it's not normal. That's going to slow your metabolism down. And conversely, if you start a fire with some sticks and some paper and the fire gets going and you dump all this wood on it, what's going to happen? It's going to go out. It's going to affect your metabolism. You as a human are going to feel lousy because you've dumped all this fuel on and the body doesn't know what to do with it. And the insulin is spiking and then it's crashing and you're shaking. It's just a mess. We have to live in the middle, right? So we tie it all together. There's emotional component, there's physiologic components, and there's actions, right? And it all ties back to hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I can tell you, anytime I want to eat, it's one of those four reasons. If I'm hungry, physiologically for food, I need to eat. So when I have patients who call me, I have a number of patients who they weren't very big to begin with. They can't get 10 pounds off, and they want to go on semaglutide. So we put them on semaglutide, and it's not working. And it's not working. And why is it not working? It's not working because they have slowed their metabolism down so much due to lack of eating. And now we've put a drug on board that makes them eat less. So what is that doing to their metabolism? It's actually slowing it down even further. So one quick fix for that would be to take those same calories you eat all day long, as long as they're a reasonable amount of calories, and I can determine that for you, and break it up throughout the day and eat every 2-3 hours to stoke the fire, keep it going, keep it moving. If you're physiologically hungry, you need to eat. If your body is telling you you're hungry, there's a reason. And you need to determine, am I hungry because I need calories, or am I hungry because I am hungry for something else, because I'm angry, because I'm lonely, because I'm tired? And nobody wants to do this work. I don't want to do this work. I've been in recovery a million years. I've been in therapy 6 times. I say this all the time. I'm Jewish from New York, and I'm gay. That is therapy mandatory from 13 years old. So I've been in therapy a number of times, and I've worked a lot of things out, but I still haven't figured out this whole food thing. It's just ridiculous. I have a couple of things I want to reference before we move on, and I can't believe I went 33 minutes on this topic. I just can't believe it. I was so nervous that I was going to run out of things to say, and blah, 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 here I go. So I had a patient who was this small woman, and she was very concerned. The medicine wasn't working for her. It took her a lot of dosing in order to get some of her weight off. She wanted to lose 10 or 12 pounds. She got about 8 pounds off. She couldn't get the last 4 off. She ran out of medicine. She wanted to go it alone. So she went it alone, and she put 2 or 3 pounds back on, and she was dissatisfied, so she called me. We got her some more medicine, and I know she wouldn't admit to it, but I know she was starving herself. I know. She undereats. She wouldn't increase her intake, and she really had a hard time losing. And her complaint was, this new medicine isn't working. It must be a bad batch from the pharmacy. It's not keeping my appetite down like the last batch. Well, the truth is that her body was starving. And I don't care how much medicine you put on board. If you have physiologic hunger, you're going to have physiologic hunger. You may be able to tamp it down with an amphetamine sometimes or a GLP-1 receptor, but inevitably her problem was that she's not taking in enough calories, and that is what's going to cause her to think that the medicine is not working. And I've heard this over and over again. And when I ask the patient, what exactly are you eating, and they tell me, and I realize that they're not eating a lot of calories, that's the reason the medicine is not working and why they're hungry. I have another patient, and she's watching, and she can chime in if she wants. You know, weight management is about energy in, energy out. Very simple. If you've ever been on Weight Watchers and they did that points program, you get a certain amount of points based on your height and your weight, and you eat to that amount of points and you should lose weight. Now, if you exercise, you would get points back. So what does that tell me? That tells me that Weight Watchers was willing to give you back food for exercise. So exercise burns calories. So when we look at net in and out, we need to take into account the exercise. So this one particular gal I'm talking about, she knows who she is. She had a protein shake and she went to hot boot camp, right? So protein shake is 200 to 300 calories, if that. And hot boot camp is probably good for 500 calories. Then she went home and she had a fruit smoothie with a little bit of protein in it, maybe another 200 calories. She's still at zero. She's at net zero. What exactly is her brain functioning on? You got to have calories and food in order to eat. She was shaky. She was nervous. She was sweating. She couldn't think. She was unable to focus. Well, number one, she was on the medication. So that is hypoglycemia, because this is an insulin-like peptide, and it will drive your insulin levels down, and it will drive your blood sugar. It will drive your insulin levels up and your blood sugar down, which will make you feel hypoglycemic, which will manifest itself as anxiety, inability to concentrate, confusion, and not type of confusion, but just like, what's happening? What was I doing? That type of confusion. And she was in denial. She didn't want to hear it, and on and on and on. And I told her, go get a glass of juice. She had a glass of juice. Guess what happened? She felt better. And when she increased her calories, that stopped happening. So, those are those two stories. And I have plenty more. But let me look at my show flow. What are we supposed to talk about now? Donna, let me ask you, do you have any questions, like just as a layperson listening, did you come up with any questions or anything that you maybe thinks needs clarified or any comment?
One thing I will add is another big thing is fluid intake. And on top of just calorie intake, you need to be taking in enough water, because not drinking water will make you feel hungry in itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to tell you this. I'm going to speak Southern again. Praise Jesus. That is the truth. I have another patient, wasn't losing weight, and she was a prime candidate for this drug. She was slightly overweight. She was a reasonable eater, on and on and on, and she wasn't losing weight. And her dosing was getting jacked up, and she still wasn't losing weight. So I asked her to journal her food intake for me, because I needed to see what she was eating. And what I didn't see on her food intake was water, no fruit, no vegetables. And we got to talking, and she went ahead and increased her water intake. And guess what? She lost 4 pounds that first week. So, fluid is really, really important. All righty. So we did the psychology of hunger. I hope that cleared some stuff up. Let's move on to my friend Donna here. Ian, I don't know if you want to sling her picture up. Let's use that for reference. Just give everybody a bird's eye and see. Okay, so this is Donna before and this is Donna after. This lovely creature is sitting here in the studio with me. She's been with me about 18 months. We've done all sorts of things to her, and the latest thing we've worked on is her weight management, and we've gotten her down to this beautiful shape. And she actually has an interesting story to tell about her food intake and her medication and her dosing. So I think at this time, I may turn it over to you just for a second. Tell me what happened You got most of your weight off and you had about 10 or 12
Yeah.
pounds left that you
Well,
were
I
trying to
had
beat.
started first, you had balanced my hormones, which I think was huge in the beginning. And it started coming off, with my menopause and everything. But I was still having trouble losing the weight. And so, through you helped me get on the right path and start losing the weight. But then I got to a place where I plateaued, and for like 3 months I couldn't lose anything. And I was working out, I was eating what I thought was eating right, and not overeating. And so I added the water, which helped in the beginning, but I was still not losing that last 10 pounds. And that's when I really did some research, and I was trying to figure out what my body was doing and why it was not losing weight when I knew I was still overweight, but nothing was happening. So, and I knew all my hormones were right. So I knew there was something more. So I did a lot of research, and I found out the calories I was intaking weren't sufficient, A. And B, I was not taking in enough protein. And so when I really redid the food that I was putting into my body, I added more cottage cheese and yogurts and lean meats. And I did away with a lot of the empty calories. Alcohol was one, and just fruits that weren't doing anything for me, or different things that weren't doing things for me.
It's amazing to me. And what happens when you did that?
All of a sudden, it started coming back off again.
Okay,
Yeah.
and let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
Were you on semaglutide at that time?
Yes.
You were.
Yes.
And what happened with your dosing?
But because I wanted to take more calories in, I backed up the dosing. So I went off of the higher dose down to a lower dose. Okay. And then I started losing more weight.
So yeah. This to me is a huge revelation. When Donna told this to me, it all of this started to make sense to me, because when we undereat, we know we're going to slow the metabolism down, and that's how we're unable to get those last 10 pounds off, because we've been able to get ourselves down through decreased calories and exercise, but you can go too low and you can hit a wall. Now, I agree, if you change the fluid intake and you change the makeup of the food a little bit, that will also help. But key is increased calories. And I don't know why this is, and maybe you can answer. Why am I happier when I'm not hungry? Is that not a crazy question? I have noticed, I've been in weight management now 5-6 years. The clinic I worked at, we did weight management, and now I'm on my own, and I do a lot of weight management. And people are happiest when they're not hungry. Does anybody want to chime in on that? Because it's myself is the same thing. I'd rather not eat and function beautifully than have to eat. It's very bizarre. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I like to eat good food. I mean, I do like to eat, but I also don't like it to control me. And I think sometimes I feel a lot of that control. Like, I feel like I have to go eat because I'm starving, even though I know I'm not starving. It's because I'm bored, or it's because, yeah.
Right. Well, so it's interesting you say you don't want to be controlled by food, but yet we want to control food.
Yeah.
When our brain needs food to function, and the systems that tell us to eat are systems that we can't control. So you see that's why they call it hangry. You go, girl.
Yeah.
You see, I think dichotomy is the word, how it's so, it just makes no sense. We don't want to eat, yet our brain is telling us we must eat because it's what we need in order to function. Everybody needs fuel, and we don't want to. We want to not be hungry. And I'm a victim of the same thing, and I am very much controlled by food. I'm the first to admit that. I find myself eating sometimes when I don't want to eat. I find myself overeating when I know that this next bite is going to push me over the edge. It's crazy. And this is why I really wish I had the psychiatrist or psychologist with me, because he could really speak to, methods of getting around that. But it's just a cluster as far as I'm concerned. But you look fabulous, and you told me pre-show you are 3 pounds from your goal weight,
Yeah.
which is unbelievable, and you don't feel like you're starving yourself?
Yeah, I just went on a vacation and I ate like a queen. Like we stopped at Dairy Queen and got dip cones and, we did little special things along the way. And when I got done, I think my body was just like it had held in like 2 pounds, but already the 2 pounds are gone.
Listen,
So,
if you can go on
yeah,
vacation and put on only 2 pounds, that's
yeah.
amazing. I did 3. I also, when I was on vacation, I said in the beginning I had put 3 pounds on when I came back, and then more because of changes that I made. But even like at the holidays, I remember in December, if I would go through my Instagram posts, I was so excited that I got through the holidays with no weight gain, because that's tough. In the clinic, there's all sorts of treats and candies. People are bringing things. I love a
Right.
sweet. I love to eat good. There's holiday parties. I'm a face stuffer. I don't drink anymore, so my calories come from food. It's not alcohol calories. I did get somebody started yesterday on the program, a boyfriend and girlfriend, and I know they're going to have hard times because they are big drinkers, and their caloric intake is going to be very affected by the amount of calories
Oddly
they
enough,
take.
for me and for most people I've talked to, the drug itself reduces your cravings for alcohol, makes you not want it at all.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
really
to me.
did.
Listen, I love it. I'm going to do a show about addiction, because there are some medications that we can use to stop drinking, stop doing opioid, whatever it is. And I have a lot of high-powered clients that use this drug intermittently because they can get out of control, but they're not willing to give the drug up altogether, but it affects them professionally, and they need to have some downtime. So we plunk a pellet in them, and it stops them from drinking for a couple months and allows them to get their focus back. And then because they choose not to give up drinking, and I respect that. It's not, not everybody has to give up drinking, and sickness, your alcoholism or whatever is your own personal thing. It has nothing to do with me. But I can help with that, and there'll be a show on that. There'll be, more shows on hormones and peptides, and what we're going to talk about now is more peptides. And I really want to thank you for sharing that bit. I mean, key, and it was an eye opener for me. Even though I knew that, when you told it to me, it just solidified everything that I believe about weight management, and it also highlighted what is wrong with me. And why I'm big. I'm a big boy, or I was a big boy, and I tend to be a big boy, and I just can't stand it. So, we talked about peptide medicine last show. Peptides are about, oh my God, just bear with me. Let me regroup. Peptide medicine is about signaling the body to do something. So we apply peptides to help with disease process and also to trigger other actions. For instance, I'm a big proponent of human growth hormone. I know nobody wants to hear about that. It's very expensive. The pharmaceuticals are all there. They talk about how they don't want people on a human growth hormone, and on and on and on. So I was on human growth hormone for a long, long time. It is a peptide, and I went from 29% to 19% body fat on that peptide. This was before semaglutide, but after my weight loss surgery, which is no secret. I lost almost 30 pounds on semaglutide after my weight loss surgery, but my body changed because of human growth hormone. So, with the not creation of the what is it? What is the word that I'm trying to find? When we learn something, we research something, and then we create it. Not invention, whatever it is. We know about peptide medicine, and we figured out how to synthesize them. So there are a couple of precursors to human growth hormone. They're much less expensive, and they do just as good a job as growth hormone. And they're called ipamorelin, samorelin, CJC 1295, BPC 157. Those are all peptide medicines. There's another one, tesmorelin. And what they do is they trigger the body to do an action, and that action is to squeeze more growth hormone out of the pituitary gland. And what growth hormone does for us, natural or supplemented, If you remember back to when you were 18, 20, 30 years old and you cut yourself, you healed in 3 minutes. Now at 40 and 50, it takes a little bit longer. You were able to eat, disgusting food, and you were able to maintain your weight. That is not as easy as we're older. Hair and skin was better when we were younger, and it's not as good as we're older, and that has to do with growth hormone. So these particular peptides, they work on two different systems. So I love Serena. You didn't know I had weight loss surgery? Girl, I tell you everything. Well, I'll tell you my story another time. Yeah, 6 years ago. Um, um, so easy for me to lose my train of thought. Is it? I'm really just a blithering idiot, but I do the best I can. So we're talking about growth hormone. I lost all that body fat plus weight. Oh, so there were two components. The two different drugs. My favorite combination currently is ipamorelin and CJC 1295. Ipamorelin acts on the pituitary and causes more natural production of growth hormone. It's different than supplementing with growth hormone. When we supplement with growth hormone and we inject growth hormone, we're flooding the system. So we actually slow the pituitary down a little bit. And people find that to be a negative, and I don't, because we shoot it 5 nights a week and we rest 2, so it allows the pituitary to recover. That's a whole nother topic. Because everybody's an expert because they looked it up on Google. And they saw it on TikTok. So the peptide medicine is a little different because we're not flooding the system with growth hormone. We're triggering the body to produce more. In combination with CJC 1295, CJC 1295, which is an injectable peptide, causes the receptor sites, the sites that accept the growth hormone, to be more susceptible to growth hormone. Similarly to diabetes or prediabetes. When we're diabetic or pre-diabetic, we either don't have enough insulin or the receptor sites are not sensitive to. So this magic combination makes us produce more growth hormone and makes the accepting sites more susceptible. So it does things like shrinks body fat. I've said this before and I will say it again. I was, after growth hormone and my initial weight loss, I was 202 pounds, 19.5% body fat from 29. Since I've been on ipamorelin, CJC, and semaglutide, I've lost another 22, 202 to 170 is actually 32 pounds. And my body fat percentage went down to as low as 13.5. I'm currently at 14.5. I'm not a bodybuilder. As you can tell, I have sticks for arms. I'm not muscular, but my body fat has shrunk. My visceral fat, that very dangerous fat that lives in the center of the body. No, Angie, it doesn't affect your thyroid. You need something else for your thyroid if you still have that problem. And if I remember, you had thyroid issues back in the day. We need to talk because I actually might be able to help you out with that if you're not feeling very well. And so this growth hormone combination really makes your body come smaller. That's really technical talk. It makes you look and feel smaller, and it actually does work. I also find that with semaglutide, because it's a peptide, much of the commentary that comes when people start on semaglutide is that, you know what, I may not have lost any weight, but I sure feel less bloated, and I also feel a little trimmer, and my clothes fit a little bit better. It's because it's affecting the body fat in your system. So that to me is very important. So peptide is really the future of medicine. It's really cutting edge currently. Of course, not covered by insurance. Insurance wants nothing to do with it. Other peptides that we can talk about quickly are AOD something or other. I can't remember if it's 954, 945, whatever it is. That is used as a weight loss drug because it affects body fat, and it also has some effect on appetite. Not as profound as, say, semaglutide or Mounjaro or Ozempic, any of those drugs, but it does work. And I actually have a compounding pharmacy that puts it in a cream, and they swear when you apply that cream to difficult areas like low body belly fat or low belly body fat, it helps to shrink that down. And, I'm sure that it works because when before I went on this journey, I was on cream metformin because I didn't want to suffer the GI effects of metformin pills. And it really did help with my body fat. And again, peptide, believe it or not. So that was very interesting. So there is a whole host of peptides that do a whole host of things. There are peptides for hair and skin. There, GHK copper is amazing for the skin. Something I'm going to start because I want to try to improve my skin yet even more. Also good for your hair. The growth hormone peptides. There are peptides that will help you if you have acute injury. BPC 157 is great for body healing. Athletes are very, very in love with this drug because it helps with soreness, it helps with injury. It can be injected at the site of injury, and then it's injected 5 nights a week to enhance healing. I mean, peptide medicine is a 4-hour show. And we'll get there. We'll do it in small bits, and we'll talk about that. I see that we're coming to almost 5 to 7. I think I'm going to try to wrap up here. If there are any questions in the field, this would now be the time to ask. 2 things I want to say. I'm not sure what the next show is going to be about. There was a report this week on the Today Show. Maria Shriver came to the show, and she said, there is a new hormone study that has disproven everything we know about hormones on the negative. Meaning, we have been taught that hormone medicine is dangerous. It causes cancer. It makes us sick. That has been disproven. I meant to bring the clip to roll it tonight, but I didn't bring it. But that is something that I will be able to utilize in the future. And we'll talk about hormones and how it can help us, especially through the menopausal period or the andropausal period for men, how it helps us look, feel, and act better. That might be one show. Another one could be possibly peptides. Again, I forgot what I was talking about. I'm wrapping it up, and I am trying to see where. So no questions from the field. Did you have any more questions?
No.
You did not. I want to say thank you very much to Show Studio, whatever this place is called. I must be hungry because
Show
my brain
creation.
is Show
Creators.
Show Creators. Thank you to the staff here. Thank you, Donna, for coming and spending time with me and being willing to share your story. To those who tuned in, I greatly appreciate that you tuned in and spread the word. My Instagram is at Hello Aesthetics. Facebook is helloaesthetics.com. My website is helloaesthetics.net. There is a TikTok account. I'm still learning how to use TikTok, and I guess I'm going to be making 30-second videos of me doing goofy things in order to drive business to me. I don't know. I'm 60. I don't know about all this young whippersnapper stuff. So in the end, thank you for tuning in. I'm sure I've forgotten to say something or I've forgotten to thank someone. So please forgive me. I was really nervous tonight because this topic is not my expertise. But, yes, it was scripted, but I think I did okay. I don't care. Thank you, Serena. You're also awesome. And again, I'm always available for consult questions. If you're my patient, you know that you're entitled to my time. If you're not my patient, you're entitled to my time. It just costs a small fee, or it costs treatment. And then you have access to me. The name of the practice is Hello Aesthetics. I'm all over the internet. You can reach me at 864-363-5449. That is the best way to get me. Please don't call me. Just text me. I hate to answer the phone. If we have a lot to talk about, I will call you. But just text me with your basic questions or an inquiry, and I'll take care of you. So again, I want to say thank you to the studio, to my guests, to my future guests. The next show will be in the next month. So today is the 18th of May. So it'll be around the 18th of June. It'll be posted on all the socials. And, if anybody has anything that they want to promote and they want to be a guest, please let me know. And I would love to have you. So thank you very much. And at 3 minutes to 7, I'm going to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And peace be with you. And good luck on your weight loss journey if that's where you're at. And think about why you're eating and why you're hungry, because it's key.